So going back to debate, like going back to Donald Trump for a bit. One of the things that really grabbed me, and it clearly grabbed a lot of people who were watching, was and he said it before like this: the African Americans and the Latinos, and that right, as if somehow we're a foreign group, so unlike him, like I remember when my grandma used to say, when my parents split up, she'd call my mother the mother. It has a way of depersonalizing. And there's actually a piece by a linguist that's out that talks about how when you put that "the" in front of a group or a particular characteristic or something like that, it's a way of dehumanizing and actually creating something as an other that is evaluated and examined separately from you and your personal values, because we've seen so much of that, though, with people of color, with Black people in particular in this country, with our history of slavery and other stuff. We've seen how we have been made to be other so that we can then be compartmentalized, categorized, and separated out. We see it happening with the left, right? They're other, they're stupid, they're privileged, whatever the insult that's thrown our way, to somehow box us off so that we can be separated out and dealt with separately. Right? It's a means of separating people out. It's a means of otherness and creating a way so that you can then, we need to control their behavior, or we need to do this. Just the whole way that he talks. So I can understand where people think that there are people who genuinely believe that voting against him is actually going to save brown people. I mean, maybe you could try and argue that there might be less people deported. I don't know really how you make those arguments given the facts that we have in front of us as the existing. You can't argue that maybe less people will die at the hands of police, because people are dying at the hands of police right now. We have the president we have now. So there are things that are beyond the control of either one of those two people that will continue to happen unless we, as a movement, as individuals in our communities, actually organize and engage. So I tweeted out, the fact that, watching this, I was like, the way he says the African Americans, it really bothers me. And the more and more, it doesn't matter whether and shout out to Wendy Muse. Wendy had a brilliant tweet the other day. She said that she is a Black woman in America married to a Muslim immigrant. Trump people, get out. Don't be following me. Don't be retweeting me. Don't be liking me. Like, you crazy. That's basically the gist of it. I might have added a little more. And then, she was like, and Hillary people, don't be getting all excited and stuff, because y'all can get it too, basically. And so last night, my thing was, I hate the way he says the African Americans. It just sounds, it's intentional. It's absolutely intentional. The way it's said. It's not that he doesn't know what he's doing. He knows what he's doing, because he talks about people and then he says a very specific phrase when he's having a very specific conversation. Particularly last night, he was talking about how we don't have education. I'm usually not one of those that gets on the whole, like, oh my God, we're not all poor. I grew up poor. I know about government cheese and food banks and soup kitchens and stuff like that. But at the same time, I mean, the way he frames things, this otherness, it appeals to a certain segment. And don't get it twisted, Hillary Clinton has her own language that she uses to appeal to those same groups of people. But what's interesting is the Trump supporters. And someone had an article about how they get so mad about political correctness, and they're happy that he's calling it out. So we had a very lovely woman, an attorney actually, join us on Twitter to share with us her thoughts in response to mine not liking it. I mean, she went through everything under the sun that absolutely had nothing to do with this point, and they can't even give us anything valid to say about. They don't even have any valid points to Trump. I've had people tell me, vote for Trump because he's going to save us all. He don't even like Black people like that. He liked the one they making him money, or. That's about it. I know I see that you guys are trying to call in. Like I said, I think that we've had a technical issue tonight with the phones with Skype. So I do apologize for that, because I really, really, really did want to get you guys on the phone and hear from you. And it's jumping tonight, which is exciting. And I do apologize. But seriously, please, you can actually, if you guys actually leave a message on the Skype, and I can even put together something with your voicemails. Like, I know technology is not perfect, but that's more reason to support, become a Patreon of the way. Even though I'm hosting for Ben, I'm gonna plug myself for a moment, because seriously, like, it is not easy to be able to do this stuff, without your support. I know many of you are Patreons of Ben. If you have $1 to shoot my way too, it helps us and able to build out the technology so that we can minimize these types of interruptions and disruptions in our ability to communication and flow together. Because I think it's best when I can communicate with you. But so this lady it was just a good time. Some other folks jumped in. Even our producer David Grossman kind of got in on the fun. And I say it's fun because it's fascinating. It's actually fascinating to see and to look in the minds. And one thing, because there was actually two other Trump supporters kind of got into action, and all three of them were lawyers, or at least their profiles say they were lawyers. And then there was another one, Gucci girl or something like that. She was just deranged. But the lawyers really were interesting to me, because then it made me think about how we talk about the legal profession as being still predominantly white in this country, very unrepresentative of people of color. And in particular, when we're talking about prosecutors across the country are predominantly white men, like overwhelmingly white men. And we talk about, parity in the criminal justice system and the issues with racial disparities across the board. And then you look at the mentality of some of these white lawyers, and no, not all white lawyers, right? But it's just, I just focus on it because I had 3 back-to-back last night, different places. And again, it could be all the same troll accounts, who knows? But just thinking about when you have, even when you look at law schools, the faculty is largely white men of a certain era. And we don't really begin to change the way business is done until we can really begin to influence how people are engaged, how people are educated, nurtured, where that's coming from, right? If you're not taught anything differently, some of us, of course, some people are autodidacts and learn on their own and figure it out as they get along, but the majority of folks do not. And if they're not given something different, they'll just go along with what they've been raised with. And so this lady was definitely, she just was on. There's no such thing as ISIS. You just heard Trump on the debate talking about ISIS, but you want to say there's no such thing? Okay. And some of her points, again, someone pointed out to me, like, well, some of her points about Hillary are correct. They are. Some of her points are. But here's the thing. I wasn't talking about Hillary Clinton. I don't even support Hillary Clinton, right? I already said it. I'm not voting for her. I'm voting for Jill Stein. I don't even support her. So why are you talking to me about her? I'm not talking about her. I'm talking about him. And that's the thing people got to get past too. Just because I'm not kissing your candidate's ass doesn't mean you need to talk to me about the other person. I don't like them either. But the fact that we can't even talk about issues with Trump and race, these people get so defensive. That tells me a lot about where we really are in America and where we have been. It's just now in vogue to be openly discriminatory again, right? This never went away. And that's what we got to work on, actually moving the needle, not just suppressing and telling people they can't be that way in public. We got to really actually address these issues. One of the young sisters who started following me recently, she actually said she got tired of Tom Harton and decided to come over to our way. So I'm, shout out, definitely. I told her I was going to quote her tonight. I definitely appreciate the support always, but like, this is so true because we've known this has been an issue for so long, right? We've known that this has been a problem. And shout out to Kaylee Douglas. She said, all of us non-whites knew they were there. White people just now got hit to the League of Racist Uncles. I love it. League of Racist Uncles. Now it's all their relatives' job to do work. No more excuses for Aunt Sharon if you're suddenly terrified of Trump. And that's true. Because I had actually a bunch of people in respect to folks who shared with me a couple of days, maybe a week or so ago, about how difficult it actually has been for them to have those conversations. I know many of you do try to have those conversations with your friends and family and social networks and stuff. And bravo to you. And we got to find a way to help lift each other up to be able to have those conversations and be able to work with people, because it's not tolerable. But there are too many of us who sit there, and we do have that uncle or that aunt or that grandfather, or whoever, and we don't say anything or do anything, or we don't try. And like I said, it's difficult. It's not easy. I'm not going to act like my grandfather never said anything crazy growing up either. But at the same time, when we're talking about oh my God, Trump is so bad. But when you got those same, and you don't understand where Trump came from, or how this is happening, or where was this at in America. But when you think back to growing up, and people would tell certain jokes or have certain attitudes or grab the purse, or you couldn't really bring your black friends home. I will never forget when my little brother, my youngest brother is 18, first semester of college. I will never forget when he came, when we were visiting, and little girl at school, again, we lived in West Virginia. But stuff like this happened, elsewhere. It happens elsewhere too. But when we look, he said he couldn't. He was the only one in the class that didn't get invited to. He was in pre-K, I think, or maybe it was kindergarten. He didn't get invited to a birthday party. And the rule is, when my kids are a little younger, that you couldn't pass out stuff at school. If you weren't inviting everybody, then you couldn't pass out, invitations and stuff in class. And I don't, I guess maybe that came from out of bullying and stuff, and this definitely would fit in that same area. But basically, he asked the little girl after everybody got the invitations why he couldn't go. She was like, "Oh, my daddy don't let ins in our house." And they're like 4 or 5 years old. And they play together at school and everything, and she didn't even think anything of it. But he didn't know necessarily what she said to him, but he just knew it was something about him being different. Of course, my godmom, she raised hell and let everybody have it. But, that type of tolerance, like one of the things I always think about with this conversation is A Different World. There's an episode of A Different World, I think it might be season 4 or 5, maybe like later on in the show, might be season 4. Season 4 or 5. Anyway, Different World. If you've never seen A Different World before, great show. Yeah, I know Bill Cosby had issues, but Debbie Allen, did a lot of the producing and stuff like that. Really took over. Great show. Hillman is based on Howard, her alma mater, Debbie Allen's alma mater. Anyway, they were definitely hit on several really serious issues. And there's this one episode, Dean Cain's actually in it, where Hillman, which is a fictitious HBCU, plays a all-white school, what we call a PWI, predominantly white institution. And there is an incident where the main characters, Dwayne Wayne and Ron Johnson, get into a fight with 3 white students from the other school, and then they all get arrested and stuff like that. And so they're all sitting in the jail cell, and the cop is trying to get the story about what's going on. So, it's one of these, you know how shows were in the 90s. Everybody, when you go back and people retell it, and they always tell it as if the other person's so awful compared to them and they were so great. So they're going through and they're trying to figure out what happened. And there's the one guy who was kind of a reluctant participant, and he was there with his boys, but he wasn't really down for what they were doing. And basically what happened is, I guess Ron scammed them out of some money maybe or something like that. I may be remembering this not exactly right, but they got upset because I think maybe they were betting on the football game. And I think maybe they knew that someone was suspended or something from the other team and they didn't know it. And so he used that to his advantage. So they wrote NI. It was it was either NI or NIG on the hood of his car. And so then they start fighting or whatever. So anyway, so when the cop is talking to them and stuff like that, and so they were telling different things. And so finally the one white guy who's kind of reluctant participant in all this, he's just like, stop it. And he tells a story about how, he never had a problem with black, he never knew that he was different from black kids. They played together, they even came over his house. They went to school together. But it wasn't until he went on a fishing trip with his father and his uncle, or father and grandfather, something like that. And his dad tells a joke. It's like, what do you call a black doctor? An N. And the dude was just talking about how that shook him to his core. And I think about that because how many of us who are, how many of you are good liberals out there who have heard such jokes from your counterparts and stuff? I mean, and it's on all of us to address issues of anti-racism, because even though there are so many issues that persist in this country, when we look at the root and the seeds of oppression and degradation, it's heavily grounded in, 3 major isms: racism, sexism, and classism. When we look at the creation of this country, enshrining power in white male landowners, at the same simultaneously declaring blackness as inhuman, as to be sold as property only, that sets forth our entire standard for how property, wealth, creation is built in this society. and proximity to whiteness gives you greater access, or so people think. So we need to have these conversations. We need people who are willing to leverage, you know, their understanding and their position to move those things over. So I really appreciated her tweet and stuff, because I was like, little sis is dead on.